There you go.
Yep.
Got it.
Yep. Did you see that rally yesterday?
Yeah, part of it.
Oh my gosh.
There were
Unbelievable, dude.
millions of people there.
How many?
Yep. I don't know.
Oh, I didn't hear either. I didn't hear
Looked like millions.
I didn't hear the estimate.
No, I haven't heard that either. But it was good because it was people of all different
Yes.
backgrounds and faiths and everything. It wasn't just
Yes. That is true. And now the Israelis have confirmed that Hamas's headquarters is under the hospital.
under the hospital,
They
under
took-
all the different hospitals.
Yes, and they took
They're
over,
meant different.
they took over the big hospital, and
Right.
now they're giving aid to like the little premature infants. That's just so
Let's hope they live through it.
yeah, I hope so too, but we have no control over that.
Oh. Said there's a 3-year-old little boy who lost both of his parents already. And that's not the only one, of course.
Oh, I know.
There are probably lots more. And I'm
Yes.
sure there are lots more that didn't even make it that far.
True.
Because
True.
they just bombed. They didn't care what they were bombing.
Right, they didn't care. Right.
That's what kills me when I hear that Israel did that, because I mean Israel didn't do that, but Israel did some similar things and killed a lot of
Yes,
people.
I know.
And they had to, and I know they have to, but
Right.
I really
Well,
wish we could say that Israel didn't do that, but that's war. War is
that's
hell.
war. Exactly. That is what is war. What war is all about. Yep.
Yeah.
Later.
Not good. Not good. Well, Pam, hello.
Hi,
Welcome
Hi,
back.
Pam.
nice to be back.
Were you traveling?
Hmm?
You were traveling?
I was in Arkansas for a while.
Oh, okay.
Steve, we have 2 different listings for this Torah study.
You
Yeah.
There was an
Just-
earlier one that maybe,
just the one I sent yesterday and the one before that on Sunday.
Well, the one,
oh, I think she means the printout that we had before.
Oh, you're talking about the Excel sheet that's got all the dates and stuff?
Yeah. I think that's it.
Yeah, no, I've not I need to redo that.
We
yeah,
messed up a little. We got out of order and so.
Right, there were like
Okay.
2 weeks that we messed up.
oh, okay,
We're on track as far as the correct portion.
okay. Because I found both of them, and one of them said the passcode was Parsha, and the other one had a passcode that was a number. So,
Go with the latest.
Yeah, go with the latest.
yeah,
I just copied and pasted what Charlotte had done and figured that should do it.
Mm.
But I'll check and verify it.
So you haven't sent the other list out yet?
Did you stop?
The
Say
one that
again?
has you haven't sent the list with the dates on it out
No,
yet?
I have not yet. I got to work on that. I'll update it today.
What is today? The 15th?
Yes,
15.
yep.
The Ides of November.
I have to keep reminding myself what day it is. Okay.
Yeah, Thanksgiving's gonna be here before we know it.
Yeah.
Next week from tomorrow.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, I gotta get ready for our company.
Oh, you're having your family in?
Yeah, my family's
Good.
coming in, and so I've got to get all these beds
Oh.
ready.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I know. It's that can be an issue. We
Make sure
decided to order in this year.
Oh,
to do that? That'll be it.
Yeah, I called Safeway. First I called Fry's. All they gave you was a turkey breast, green bean casserole, sweet potatoes, and cranberry relish. Nothing else. $65.
Wow.
To serve how many?
Wow,
To serve how many?
4 to 6.
Okay.
And then I called Safeway and theirs included everything except for the pie. For $59.
Ah,
okay, that's better.
So.
I'm only in for the cornbread casserole this year. Happy about that.
That's actually, I like cornbread stuffing. I like that.
Hi, Saran.
Hi, Fran.
Hi.
Fran, oh,
Welcome,
I'm glad you
welcome.
joined us. Nice.
Yes,
Hi.
glad you're here.
And where is the
Thank you.
rabbi?
Yeah, we need a rabbi.
I had never ordered anything like that. You're $59 or 60 some odd dollars. That's for how many people, or is that for
4 to
person?
6. 4 to 6 people.
4 to 6 people?
Yeah.
Well, by the time you get done with everything, it probably is at least, you
I
know,
know. I
you
mean,
know,
by the
40,
time you go
50.
purchase everything.
How
it's
much are turkeys this year?
I haven't, you know what? They're not advertising turkeys. They're just saying they'll match. They'll
it?
match
Right.
whatever Fry's or Safeway or Bashes will do.
Yeah.
Interesting.
You have to go to store with all your papers when deciding
Yep.
where you want to
Yep.
buy it.
That's right. And that's not.
I remember being in back of somebody at Walmart who was doing a price match on everything from all the stores, and I mean, it was like an extra 15 minutes standing there while she went through everything.
Really?
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Wow. Well,
So Earth to Rabbi.
yeah, he's not here. Shall I call him?
There he is.
Oh, there he is.
Is-
See, he must have heard us.
Yeah, just as
Yeah,
we
we've
spoke.
been looking for you.
And Natalie's supposed to be here too, but she's running late. So, hi, Rabbi.
I don't think he has
Hear
a
me?
set. Yes,
No,
Not well.
He's concentrating.
we did hear a voice though. Now what?
There. Okay.
louder.
Hello?
Hello.
Better,
There
that's
you
better.
are.
I see a picture.
I see the picture, but no voice
Not
yet.
saying anything, so there's nothing to hear right now. And who is this over here? Liz.
Yes,
Okay.
this is Cat.
Cat.
This is Kat.
Yes. Mine's hiding.
Have a cat and a dog?
Cat and, well, the dog is laying down on the bed, but Cat just hides and appears when she wants to.
Right.
So, Rabbi? Rabbi,
We hear you.
He's calling you.
calling me?
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Hi, you can't hear me and I can't hear you?
We hear you.
Oh, we can hear you
Now,
now.
when you're on the phone,
But why is the Zoom not working?
I have no idea.
But we
It
see
is
you. We
doing-
hear you.
I don't have any problem.
We can see you.
Right,
We can see you.
But we can hear everybody else.
Yeah.
yeah,
But my mute is off. I can't hear or I can't hear you guys and you can't hear me
We can hear
We
you.
can hear you.
We can hear you.
Oh,
through the phone, but not
Right.
through the,
And we can see
But not
11
through-
people.
Yes,
isn't that
Good to hear.
weird?
yes.
What do you, should I log out and try again or use my,
Let's try that and see what happens.
or I can log in with my phone.
Whatever
Let
you
me
want.
try one more
Whatever you
time the
feel is-
computer.
Yeah.
All right,
Okay, let me try it again.
all right,
Bye.
You want to do the prayer in the meantime, or you
we
want to?
can, sure. Together.
Well,
I don't know.
Hello.
Asher
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
we hear you now, Rabbi.
it said, it
You
said.
can hear me now, but I can't hear
Yes.
at the
you.
top. Yeah,
Why
And you
is
just
that?
connect to the phone.
We just did the prayer in Hebrew.
Yes.
All right, let's see. Can you
So-
hear me now?
Yes,
Yes,
No?
weird.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes,
Can you hear me now?
yes,
Yes.
You can hear me, but I can't hear you.
you can't hear us?
All right, I'll
you
try
have,
my phone then.
did you join with audio, Rabbi?
Um,
Can't hear me, it doesn't matter.
Nice try, Marcia, though.
I realized it. Okay.
Send him a note on chat.
Uh,
Yeah, that's a good idea. Do chat.
let's see if I can find chat here. To
Yes,
where's the rabbi on here,
he's
Danny?
rebooting.
hear me now?
Yes,
Yes,
You see me now?
yes.
Yeah.
can you hear us?
Yeah, fine, but this is my phone. I don't know
That's
why
fine.
the computer's not working.
I
That's
just
so
sent you,
bizarre.
I just sent you a chat message. Did you join audio on the bottom?
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
Did you join the audio on the bottom of your screen?
I did.
Or wherever it is, yeah.
Yeah,
Weird.
okay. Well, my
Weird.
apologies.
No, it's not your fault. Blame it
No,
on
it's
Mr.
okay.
Zoom.
This doesn't usually happen, Saran.
No, this is an unusual circumstance. So let us read the English real quick and
Oh.
we can get started. Blessed
Okay.
are
Blessed
you,
is
Lord
our
our
God,
Yes,
God,
we're all on it.
ruler of the
ruler
world,
of the world,
who has
Thank
sanctified us with your
you for your
commandments.
commandments.
So the rabbi had
commanded
some
us to
problems
obey
too.
the
in
words of
the
Torah.
Torah.
You go
Amen.
to,
Amen.
Okay,
the
Good morning, everyone.
morning.
And
Morning.
Morning.
again, my apologies for the
on my phone.
technical difficulties.
Oh,
I
We
can
have-
see 8 squares on my phone, so if people are
oh,
more than 8, you'll alert me if somebody's hand is up.
okay.
And today we're doing Perek Olive on page
Okay.
62.
Bye-bye.
So
bye-bye.
Before you start, we have a new classmate, Saran. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Welcome.
Saran is our coordinator of our religious school, our mini religious school. And that's been going very nicely. And we may open enrollment to older people who want to learn at a basic level. So if that happens, we'll let you know.
I'm actually being interviewed Friday by the Jewish News.
Oh, nice.
good.
Quick,
Very good.
quick thing. Evelyn had trouble logging on. She's gonna try to do it through the bulletin. She tried it through your link, Steve, and it didn't
Okay.
turn on. Okay,
Yep.
okay.
And Donnie's here. Okay, so let us go ahead and start.
So we're on page 62, and this is about sibling rivalry. Perek Olive, Esau and Jacob, the bitter struggle between brothers, correct? Everybody's on
Yeah.
the same
Right
page,
page.
literally and figuratively. So how many people raise your right hand if you have a sibling or more than one sibling? How many people are only children? Okay.
I didn't raise my hand because there were 13 years difference between my sister and I. Ah, Evelyn, how you doing?
Hi
Wow.
there, I finally made it.
Yay.
Didn't have
I
any
couldn't-
rivalry. We were in different households almost, you know.
So that's interesting. So you had a sibling, but you
I
felt
was an
like
only
you
child.
you were the younger?
Yes.
Wow. So 13 years.
That's amazing.
So
We had different fathers. Her father died and my mother remarried. So
Ah.
uh-huh.
we got along really well though.
Well, she was more like an aunt than a sister.
Yeah.
So and how many people raise your right hand if you're the oldest child? And raise your hand if you were the youngest child.
Yeah,
That's
Uh-huh.
me. I'm the
And
baby.
raise your hand if you were the middle child. Ah, so, and it's interesting because, I mean, maybe I'm prejudiced because I saw the hands already, but I kind of would put Pam as a middle child and I'd kind of put Liz as
Really?
the youngest child.
I don't know how I should take that.
I don't either. That just
And-
doesn't, I don't
Did
understand.
you didn't ask for how many only childs there were except for me.
Yeah, he did.
Did you?
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
he did, he
sorry.
did,
How
he did.
many, yeah, who has a sibling and who doesn't? Yeah,
Right,
I
right.
kind of asked it. But who's an only child? Totally, like, no, Marcia, you
I
don't
can't,
count.
no, because I was in the house by myself. She went off to nurses training. I was at home.
That's not being an only child. All right, well, I guess it's like that with everything in a postmodern world. We are what we say we are, right? So if I want to be a woman, I can claim to be a woman. If Marcia wants to be an only child, she can claim to be an only child. You know, you
Don't
can.
even go there, Rabbi.
All right, I'm trying to be modern
Yeah, well,
or
it's
postmodern.
not
but
working, Rabbi, it's not working.
It's hard.
No.
But well, all right. So what was it like for those who had siblings? Does anybody want to describe the experience? Was it something you'd recommend or was it something you would avoid? Saran?
My brother is 7 years younger than I am. So, I mean, we never, played together or any of that. I was his babysitter. And talk about favoritism. My mother really nurtured. He is very intelligent. He's an author. He's probably written 90 books. But she knew his talents right away. So when I was out with my friends being social, she would take him to a museum or the Art Institute or the planetarium or something every weekend and really nurtured his intellect. And I guess it paid off.
And you didn't get to go?
I didn't want to. I was busy with my friends.
Yeah, I can understand that.
So it wasn't that she deliberately excluded you,
No, not at
but
all. It was
she
choice.
saw that he was more like, I want to learn about culture, and you were like, I
Right.
want to hang out with my friends. So she let you do what you wanted to do.
Right. While I was, reading Nancy Drew, he was reading the entire Encyclopedia Britannica. He would start with A and go all the way to
Oh my
the end.
gosh.
I remember when I was 16, I went to Israel for 6 weeks with the Hebrew High School of Waterbury, Connecticut, and the Hebrew High School of Atlantic City, New Jersey. And there was one guy from Atlantic City who was just an unbelievably intellectual guy. I wonder, what happened to him. But we were at an Israeli Air Force show, and we were outside in a stadium, and these warplanes were like shooting around at top speed. And he's sitting there reading some philosophic book. I mean, literally, he was, the plane would come like within 10 feet of us at like super like loud, and everybody would be screaming like on a roller coaster. And he was just sitting there reading Camus or Sartre or Heidegger or something like that. And I thought, my, that's really extreme.
Yeah.
So there are people like that. So your mother, you're saying she was a good parent and that she let each kid do what they wanted in a good way.
Basically, yes.
And you can't be too permissive and let kids do what they want to in a bad way, but that's the trick. You have kids who are very resentful. I mean, I hear a lot, older women who at that time their parents felt their girls should be in the house and they shouldn't go to college, or maybe they shouldn't even finish high school. They should work and make money to fund their brothers to go to medical school or law school or whatever. There was a very, and that was considered normal. And so later, the daughter usually went back to the parents 30, 40 years later and said, what did you do to me? And the parents are like shocked, and they said, "We didn't do anything. We didn't do anything that the Horowitzes and the Moskowitzes and the O'Reillys and the Antonellis, every family we knew of whatever background did exactly the same thing as us. That was what was done. So for you to blame us for ruining your life when we wouldn't let you go to college, that was what was done. And why would you blame us?" But for the girl who was, her dreams of being whatever were totally destroyed because of what she would see as vicious parents, that's not an acceptable excuse. But it depends on your perspective. And it also, of course, affects your relationship with your sibling. So when we're talking here about Esav and Jacob, it's not just the siblings who are quarreling or fighting. I mean, at some point, Jacob thinks Esav's going to slaughter him and his family and all of his entourage. But it comes from the parents to some degree, usually, right? Not always. And it's very hard to trace it. Sometimes you could have these wonderful, apparently wonderful parents, and the children are at odds with each other and threatening to murder each other. But usually, frequently, sometimes you can see how the parents behave that contributed directly to the conflict between they usually, made the two kids competitive and say, which of you is going to do this and which of you is going to do that. And, they got the kids competing against each other rather than working together. But, I don't know. Okay, other comments about that, Saran?
I had read an article that said that your parents are different parents to each one of their children, whether they realize it or not. Maybe not in a bad way necessarily, but you may treat each child a little bit differently, probably according to what you see their personalities develop into. I'm not sure. I don't think it's conscious, but they said that you do. Sorry. That's my daughter. I'm going to mute it.
Okay.
Is he agreeing? Is she agreeing or disagreeing?
No, he actually sees a coyote.
I think she's disagreeing with Saran.
I'm gonna go ahead and mute her.
She's Marcia.
I think from what Saran says, I think that there is nothing wrong with what that mother said. It would do, or father. I mean, if they see something positive in one direction or another with a child and they encourage it, and treat them a little differently, because you treat everybody a little differently. You treat your friends differently. Your interactions with friends are different one to another, depending on what innately that their strengths are. Don't you think? So I wouldn't blame
I guess it depends.
If you
Donna?
have an intellectual friend, you're going to speak to them differently than somebody that is more socially oriented and not so much into, an active social life, et cetera, et cetera. It's just a matter of that's how people do,
I had a brother. I still have that brother. He's 6 years younger than I am. So as I was growing up and he was growing up, he was nothing but a pain in my backside. And I went off to nursing school at 18 and he was 12 years old. And he had very beautiful blonde curly hair. And he wanted to dye it black. And so my mother helped him. And I said, "Mother, that's terrible. Why did you help him do something like that?" Because he did not look good in black hair. And she said, she says, it was either that or he was going to do it and make a wreck out of my kitchen. So she says, I helped him do it, and my kitchen survived. And so I thought, But I praise God now because we are the best of friends. He lives in Texas. And I see him, we see each other every so often, and we talk on the telephone, usually every week. And so he's the most precious thing to me right now.
I think Saran's dog is jealous that her attention is focused on the computer screen and not on her. But and Saran, you have an only dog, right?
Only dog.
Okay. Other people, Shirley or Liz, comments about your growing up in a multi-child environment and the potential for conflict. Shirley?
Well, I was an only child for 4 years. My sister was born when I was 4. And my mother was sick from the day she got pregnant until she delivered. And my dad had to go to work, so he taught me how to make, at 4 years old, he taught me how to make oatmeal and chocolate pudding. And so, and we didn't have microwaves or anything, so I don't know how I mean, I cooked them on the stove, I guess, at 4 years old.
Wow.
But then my grandparents came from Tennessee, the first time they'd ever been to our house. And they came, and the 4 of them, my grandparents and my parents, locked themselves in this bedroom with this new thing that just had come into our house that made noise and everything else. And I was avoided. I was not included. I was very jealous. It was terrible. And I hated her from that day on. And we never got to be close. We were never, we don't have anything in common. But I mean, I learned to put up with her, but not to feel the way I should have as a sister. But then I had a brother when I was 10, and we were very, very close. Till he got married and had children and everything, different kind of a family. But it's strange how people would do things that they don't realize what they're doing. And that's 4 people with this new baby locking themselves into a bedroom, and I wasn't even included, and it was a terrible thing to do to a child.
And you made an indirect reference that when your brother got married, that distanced him from you, and that's a frequent thing. I mean, I'm not sure exactly what happened in your case, but I know other cases where the siblings get along fine until one of them gets married to somebody who it appears deliberately wants to alienate them from their siblings and maybe more importantly their parents. So I have numerous stories where people will come in and say, I don't talk to my brother or sister. Ever since they got married, they've broken with the family and they have no contact or only a little contact or only antagonistic contact. And before that, everybody got along fine. So, but you don't have control over who your sibling marries. Marcia.
I've seen that with friends. My husband's very best friend got married and we didn't see them at all. They came up to visit us, stayed a half an hour, and went back from up to Connecticut, I guess it was, and they went back to New York. I mean, it was ridiculous, and it was just because she wanted him to be friends only with her friends and her family. So, so it goes that way too. You can't control that.
You can try.
How far is it going to get you?
Right.
Pam or Liz, what was it like being the middle or younger?
Well, and I was in the middle and there was no drama. I'm one of 5. We still get together frequently and no issues. So.
And do you attribute that to deft handling by both parents, or what made it so smooth?
Well, we, as a family, we did a lot of things when my parents were alive. So yeah, it's a continuation of that.
So what did your parents do that was so successful?
They spent a lot of time with us. We did a lot of trips. They took us on a lot of trips around sightseeing and things.
But how did they prevent there from being sibling rivalry that destroyed relationships?
Well, we all had unique interests. So, we all did our thing, even though we were together, and I don't know, just no drama.
Lucky.
Liz?
Yeah, I mean, I was lucky too. My brother is 4.5 years older than me. So he was more like kind of like the protector. But we did a lot of things together. He has a great imagination, so he made up all these games for us to play. And then as I got older, he was like always the one giving me advice. I didn't always listen to him, but he was the one who always gave it to me. But I could see what you're saying about marriage can change it a little bit because, yeah, he was the one who I always used to ask for advice about everything. But then when I got married, it's turned into more of my husband over time. So, yeah, it can change it a little bit.
So did getting married distance you from your brother?
I guess it did a little bit. Yeah, because they don't, like if I talk to my husband about something or yeah, I don't know, anything or how we should handle this or that, they don't always have the same thoughts and ideas about things.
But does anybody here have an explosive relationship with a sibling, like in Jacob and Esau? Not really, but you've heard of such things very frequently, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember in one of my previous congregations, there were two brothers, and they were at war with each other.
Hmm.
And apparently the mother, who I didn't know, had, fermented a rivalry between them. And so there was a war. And then one of the brothers died very young, very suddenly, and the two families were at war. It was very unfortunate, and it was very extreme. And one of the siblings of one of the kids wanted to reconcile with the siblings of the other brother, and the other brother's siblings told her to go jump in the lake.
But why would a mother do that? Why would a mother create that type of situation?
Well, I don't think it's a rational thing, but I think, she wanted to see which son would do more, and she was just, I don't know, some parents do that. It wasn't like she read all these books on child rearing and decided this was a good way to go. She just did it. She probably was raised by a parent who did something similar. I don't know. She certainly did not intend for it to turn acrimonious. You can be competitive without being acrimonious, but that doesn't, if you're very competitive, it can breed that very easily. So why do people do anything? Why do parents raise their kids just badly? They just don't know, or they have their own psychological problems that manifest themselves in how they act. I mean, all of our parents did bad things, right? Even the people who say their upbringings were great, not everything was perfect. Their parents must have had little problems, but if your parents are well adjusted generally, then that makes it easier to have a family where the big problems do not manifest themselves, which is, good. Okay, Minya, comment, and then Steve.
Yes, I can back up what Saran was saying about birth position and what your responsibilities become. I was the oldest. I had a sister, and I was born in Europe. My sister was born in the United States. So we were both treated differently. I was still the one that had to be responsible for things that went on. My parents didn't know how to speak English at the beginning, and I became the person who was like the translator. So I had a lot of responsibilities that were more than someone my age should have had at that time. And my sister never had to do any of them because she was raised the way American kids were raised, and American kids did not have to write checks for their parents like I did. Um, so it was always Helen doing things much differently and not having to be accountable compared to me. And like Shirley, I was 4.5 years older than my sister. And my mother told me that when I first saw her, I asked her if she could be sent back.
Oh, wow.
So you do when you're, I didn't have anybody to compete with until she showed up. And now I'm sorry she's not here.
Steve and then Marcia.
Well, my oldest brother was, both my dad and his brother, my uncle, were in the clothing business together in Fargo, North Dakota. And it was going to be determined which son would carry on the business between the three of us. I had two brothers older than me, and then I had a cousin, that was also going to be in the business. So the question was who was going to take over the business, because, it was just determined that my oldest brother was going to do that. He had no wonders whatsoever as to whether he was going to do that. He wanted to be an electrical engineer. So, and then my other brother, my middle brother, and myself, we all got into the same clothing business, but in Oklahoma. And, it just evolved into a situation where it wasn't healthy. You understand what I'm saying? So.
And did you work that out to some degree?
I worked it out because I moved away.
So that sometimes
it was better for me to move away than trying to confront the situation and start over and be my own person. So that's where it was.
Marcia, and then I'll move forward.
My oldest one, when my next child down was born, said that he should send her back to the hospital. They had defective merchandise, and all she did was cry, and was to what good. She was no good for anything. Okay, but the thing is that my youngest at 4, the youngest and the next one up was 6 years. So the older 3 were very close in age, and they said the youngest one got away with everything. And I would tell them, I've just prioritized at this point. They were 6 to 10 years old, 12 years old, a little older than that, because that situation was when maybe the kid was 5 or 6 and he was getting away with stuff that they never did. And they would have been told no, and he was like, I was like, whatever, because the parents change over the years. You see your children differently at different, and you as a person change over the years. So he probably did get away with a lot of stuff that the older 3 didn't. So the positioning in the household of birth, the birth positioning does make a difference, and it makes a difference on the mother's child and father's end also, as well as the kids in their relationship to each other. Now these boys, the twins, with Rebecca seeing Esau and Jacob and seeing their differences, she could see the difference between them, and she was probably she probably saw that Jacob was probably going to make a better leader. So what was she supposed to do? Just say, oh well, we'll see. She encouraged him, the way your Saran's mom encouraged her older brother.
Okay.
I don't fault her in that. Okay.
Right. And I guess if you fault or not fault, parents behave how they behave. And as Minya alluded to, parents sometimes are in particular situations, not of their choosing,
Right.
and they do the best they can based on the things they know. And, sometimes those are good and sometimes they're not.
They
Now,
needed
Jacob,
Minya. Minya was you know, a lifesaver to them in their situation, that she could
Mhm.
handle all that stuff, you know?
So now Jacob and Esav are battling, and according to Torah, this battling began very, very early. Very, very early. So, Minya, do you want to start off reading? Page 62, top left-hand corner.
Esau and Jacob, the bitter struggle between brothers. The Torah tells us that even before Esau and Jacob were born, Rebekah felt them battling with each other in her womb. It's natural for a pregnant mother to feel the uterus kicking and punching at the wall of the uterus. With twins, the activity is doubled. Physicians identify such activity as signs of life. According to the Torah, however, what Rebekah felt was more than normal activity, even from twins. She sensed that the babies she was carrying were to become two nations, and that the older would eventually serve the younger. The future struggle between the brothers was dramatized at their birth by the names they were given. The elder, Esau, was also called Edom, from the Hebrew Adam, meaning red, because he was born with a bloody red mat of hair covering his body and grew to crave reddish stew. I just didn't see where that was coming from.
I don't either.
Within the Torah, Within the Torah, he's identified as the father of the people of Edom and of the Amalekites, who were bitter enemies of the Jews. Later, during the persecution of the Jewish people by the Romans, the rabbis also referred to the government of Rome as Edom or Esau. The second born was called Jacob, from the Hebrew Akev, meaning heel, because as the Torah indicates, he was holding on to Esau's heel as he emerged from Rebekah's womb. Later within our Torah study, Jacob's name is changed to Israel and becomes the historic name for the Jewish people.
Okay. Thank you, Minya. So what was the point that you said you didn't see where it was coming from?
Oh, the stew.
The stew.
What does his red coloring have
Reddish
to do with
stew.
that he liked red stew, reddish stew?
So what is the question?
What does stew have to do with what he looked like when he was born?
And who
Ah.
cares?
Say that
Okay.
again.
No, I was saying, and who really cares?
That's right.
Well, later, because it becomes a central element in the story later, because Esau's going to sell his birthright in order to get some of, this. Also, when Isaac gives the blessing to the wrong brother, Rebekah's going to cook the stew that Esau usually cooks, and that's how they're going to fool Isaac into
Okay,
giving the
so it is
blessing.
very relevant, but at this point, it doesn't seem.
Right. It just doesn't make.
Right, but if you know the end of the story, then you'll see how it connects.
Okay.
So the two brothers are twins. So twins are born at the same time, right? Question mark.
Close.
But here they're not really born at the same time. One is first and the other is second.
It always
So-
happens,
Well,
It
that's
always
always,
is
Yeah.
like,
always happens.
Yeah, but in our minds, if you say somebody's twins, you don't care that one was born 12 minutes before the other. But here it makes a big difference, right? I mean, when you see twins, do you ask them which one was born 12 minutes earlier?
yeah.
Yeah,
No,
people do.
those those were requirements for inheritance, and the firstborn was the one who was intended to inherit whatever the father had. The second was simply the second son or a spare, the heir and the spare, and that goes back to ancient times. And so it was critical to know who was first and who came in second. And
Very good.
Oh,
But it
okay, yeah.
It isn't always timing, because there are identical twins and there are unidentical twins.
Mhm.
And there could be a boy and a girl that are twins.
Right.
So
Right. And sometimes you don't know. So you say, are you identical twins or just fraternal twins, right?
Right.
Because they look alike, but maybe they don't look exactly alike. It's hard to tell. You could have, you have siblings who are born a year apart and they look like identical twins, but they're obviously not.
Sisters can be fraternal twins also. And
Uh-huh.
brothers. Yeah. Well, that's what
Okay.
these two were.
I'm
were
sorry,
both
I didn't
fraternal.
see there's six little boxes on my phone that are down and I didn't swipe up. So the two bottom ones that I saw were Saran and Liz. And now I see Bernie, Donnie, Evelyn, and
Natalie.
And Natalie.
Natalie. Natalie, you have a number there, not your name, but that's Natalie. So I'm sorry I didn't call on the four of you. So if any of the four you'd like to make a comment now about anything from earlier or now, this is your time.
I made the Stu comment out of ignorance.
Okay. So that's the story, but according to Torah, the conflict between these two gentlemen started even before they were born. So and Rebecca could feel that the fetuses were kicking and punching at the wall of the uterus. So they weren't punching each other, but they, I guess, were punching to try to get, the better position within the womb. So
Get me out of here.
and there's a competition. So later in the times of the rabbis, they're going to refer to Esav as the ancestor of the Romans. So everything they didn't like about the Romans are attributed to the character of Esav, and everything they didn't like about Esav, they, retroactively see as Rome was seen as very powerful and pushy and lacking in nuance and derivative culture, that all the great ideas they had, they took from the Greeks and so forth and so on. So there was not too much love lost there. Okay, Minya, I guess you can continue reading right-hand column.
Bernie has his hand.
Sorry, Bernie.
You have to unmute.
The more I learn about Rebecca, the less I like her.
Right.
She started out as being a good person. That's how they found her. The old Wells story, I'll draw water for your horse or your camel, whatever. And
Right.
She was a lovable person back then, but now she is the perpetrator of anti-Semitism, if you will. Because she has trained these two kids to behave in the way that they did. She could have intervened and at least toned it down, if not prevented it.
Right. I agree with that. And the deception that she engages in against her own husband, I don't know. The justification is that he's a barbarian, Isaac's a stupid guy, and he's going to do all the wrong things, and she has to be manipulative in order to make sure that the right thing happens. But this then comes to the question: is does what's the expression? Does the means justify do the ends justify the means? And in general, it's very hard to say that they do. In practice, maybe. So sometimes you see that you have to do something bad for a good end, and you do it, and you're not regretting it. But when you sit down and talk about it, it's very hard to say that that is a justifiable thing, because to do bad stuff, hoping it'll bring a good end, too frequently what you do bad to get a good end turns out bad to do ends with a bad end. And if you do all these bad things, regardless of the end, you're still doing bad stuff. So, So I also have a lot of trouble with Rebecca. And as we said earlier, it's usually what the parents do that create the problems. But it's not just Rebecca, right? Isaac is really pathetic, but pathetic is not manipulative, and maybe manipulative is worse. But the people who support Rebecca say she had to manipulate because of her husband's stupidity. All right, Bernie, you want to follow that up?
Yeah, one could argue that Isaac wasn't stupid as we know it, but rather mentally challenged from birth. There's a whole lot of reasons why that could be argued. Not the first of which, he was born to old parents, and he's 30-something years old, and he's about to get sacrificed, and he doesn't question hardly at all that he's tied to this place, that he's going to get killed. And there's some other things as well. So I wouldn't blame Isaac, because he's just not all there.
So therefore, that would seem to justify Rebecca's manipulations, because you got a husband who's totally not there. So what are you going to do? You have to do something.
No, she's trying to steal something that belongs to Esau. And there's no justification for that except that she's dishonest.
Well, but this birthright is a religious thing. It's a leadership thing. It's not just like a Sony PlayStation. So she has to ensure that the right person leads the Jewish people into the future. No?
No.
She should just let what's supposed to happen happen.
Yes.
All right, Natalie. Oh, I see Natalie got her name back. Oh, look at that. Look at that. Now I don't have to learn. Now I don't have to learn her name because it's printed for me. That's wonderful. Okay, Natalie, do you? Bernie does not appreciate Rebecca. I think Rebecca reminds him of one of his ex-girlfriends that he didn't like.
Well, I agree with Bernie, but if you're talking about the leader for the future, do we want Esau to lead? So.
And the answer is no.
Yeah, so that makes it a complicated situation.
But Bernie says it's his, you shouldn't steal it from him. That she has no business meddling in something where the rules are clear. Isaac's following the rules. Isaac's not making up these rules. These are the rules.
Right. So then we're back to priorities. What's most important? If she sees the wrong person to lead a whole people, then maybe she's a hero.
That's what the rabbis said. The sages say she's a hero. She single-handedly made sure that the covenant passed to the right person.
Right. However, the way everything was done is not something that we really approve.
But she didn't have a choice. If she's going to do it, she had to manipulate.
And
Isaac,
she was very clever.
What?
So the question occurs to me, so how did that work out?
It worked the way it started out, with two nations, and look where we are.
Now this is that there was different. There's also the Isaac and Ishmael split, so every generation seemed to have their splits, and Ishmael is seen as the original ancestor of the Arabs, and Esav is seen as the original ancestor of the Romans and eventually of the Christians.
How come we say Esau and you always say Esav?
And how do you say it?
Everybody I think that has talked about it says it the way I say it, Esau.
Okay, Esau.
No, it's still not the same, but whatever. We know who we're talking about.
I have a New York accent.
So do I. Can't beat me.
I have a Georgia accent. Okay. So every generation has this split or and then later, of course, Jacob's children, he has 12 boys and 1 girl, and there's fighting there too. And the majority of the sons try to kill the young one of the younger sons. And that's based upon the multiple wives. So, and this is why Bernie didn't marry more than 1 woman
At a time.
at a time. Right, right. Okay, any other comments? Saran, Liz, Pam? Steve?
Okay, what would have happened if Esau did get the birthright? What would have, how would the world have become?
Comments, responses to that? What would have happened if Rebecca had not intervened and Esau would have brought back the stew and his father and him would have eaten, and then Isaac would have blessed Esau as the firstborn, which was his due, and he would have become the leader of the covenant? What would have happened? This is a Marcia question, I think.
We'll never know.
Well, Saran?
You have to unmute. Saran, you have to unmute.
Sorry, I forgot, the dog's not here. There'd probably be no Israel. I mean, everyone would be wearing togas because they'd be Romans.
So it would have been the end of the covenant in a sense.
I think so. I mean, I really think so. We can't judge. I can understand what Bernie says about Rebecca, but she thought she was doing the right thing for the future. And sometimes you have to make those kind of decisions as a parent, so I don't know if you can judge her as someone that was evil or manipulative.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Bernie has his hand up.
Bernie?
Do we really believe that people at that time had the foresight to see what was going to happen 1,000 or 2,000 years in the future?
Okay. So I
And
think you really have to separate between.
I still think Rebecca did all of this
You
for
never liked
selfish
her.
reasons. Jacob was her favorite, and that was the end of the story.
I think you have to separate. There's different ways to interpret this. One way is to look at the Torah in its own context. And then what Bernie's saying makes sense. This is just a story about people at the time.
Right.
Now, the sages who are coming many hundreds of years later, maybe 800, even 1,000 years after these stories were written, they're naturally going to see it in the long term. And they're going to logically bring to the characters a long-range perspective that they almost certainly did not have. And that's natural because for the sages, what's important is the eternal lessons of the story rather than the specifics. So I think you can look at it in very different ways, and maybe we should preface our comments by how we're looking at the story. So similarly, if you're looking at it through a rabbinic lens, the way the Talmud interpreted it, that would be very different from how the modern biblical scholars look at the same story, where they break it into different texts. And they say, well, part of this was actually from a different source entirely. So there's different ways to interpret it. So Bernie's way that at the time when these stories were told and later written down, that Rebecca is probably operating not from what's going to happen in 1,000 or 3,000 years from now, but what she wants to do at the time. This is her favorite child. She wants him to get the birthright. She doesn't like the other son. The other son maybe doesn't like her. And so it's just a family story. It's a family dynamic. Like we started out our first 20 minutes, we talked about family dynamics. Nobody said my mother favored my sister because she felt she was going to carry the covenant down for 1,000 years, right? I mean, maybe was that true, or in Steve's case, his brother. You know, it was all personal, it was all familial, it was all relationships between parents and children and children and children. Minya's case is the most, Jewishly relevant from a longer term, but even there, her parents come from Europe after the Holocaust. They have to deal with a reality. They're not thinking what's going to be good for the Jewish people in 1,000 years. How are we going to recover from the Holocaust? They're thinking, how do we pay our electric bill? How do we keep our children in school and not failing out from second grade? So everybody's family tends to look at the micro, not the macro.
Right.
So Bernie will accept your interpretation on one level for sure. And so, but if I hate my son, one son, and I love the other son's very good and the first son's very bad, why shouldn't I intervene on behalf of the good son? Is that bad? Bernie, unmute.
Well, what keeps popping into my head when I hear all these arguments is something we've been hearing a lot lately, and that's the rule of law. You got rules, you should follow them. If you're not going to follow the rules, just get rid of them.
When did Rebecca agree to follow the rules?
By cheating Esau of his birthright, by fooling Isaac,
But when did she
etc.
agree? She didn't agree to follow the rules. She wants her good son to get the birthright.
We don't
She made the rules.
necessarily have to agree to all the rules that there are, but we still have to follow them. If I don't
Okay.
like that traffic light and I want to drive through it and the policeman disagrees with me, who's going to win?
But if there's no policeman there, no cars there, you can drive through it, nothing happens.
Unless it's
Maybe.
a camera.
Yeah,
There's a camera at that intersection. Now what?
I thought they took down all the cameras. It's illegal.
There's the speed cameras and the red light cameras, but there's still cameras there.
Really?
Mhm.
Uh-oh. Not that I ever would drive through a red light, God
No.
forbid. But if I were to do it, I would do it in the security, knowing that there's no cameras. So now I'm very worried.
Or if I don't like the person who was elected to a particular office and think that my friend should have been elected instead, is it right for me to take action to make that happen?
Well, what kind of action?
Riot?
It's happened.
I'm not oblivious to that fact.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Donna, Steve, Pam,
Natalie had her hand up.
Yeah.
Natalie.
I think I understand exactly what you're saying, but maybe maybe part of it was a moral code that she broke, not a legal one. I don't know. After I said it, I don't know.
So what's the difference between a moral code and a legal code?
Well, legal, you can be fined, you can go to jail. Moral, you can have the community from your temple look differently upon you. People can stop talking to you. You can have nightmares over what you did. That would be more of breaking a moral code, where it's not legalized.
The people who break the moral codes the most successfully are people who don't have much of a conscience. So they can break a moral code and they don't feel bad. Not now, not later, not ever. If you're a sensitive person to morality, you're going to try not to break moral codes too much. And when you do, you'll feel terribly guilty. So you won't be very successful at it. But there's people who don't care. They can go into a village and murder hundreds of people, and then they can have a big breakfast the next morning.
And then they eat their breakfast.
Yeah. Evelyn?
I was just thinking of the Bitcoin scandal and Auburn, Madoff, where I consider them amoral, where they have no sense whatsoever what is right or wrong, or if they do, they certainly don't let it bother them. And the fact that they can bilk people out of millions and millions of dollars and have no conscience about it, hey, that's they are amoral, but then at some point they step over the line, and then they become illegal as well. And it's when they become illegal that the government or the law gets after them. But you can be immoral and do many things and nobody will say anything. It's only when you step over that line, that legality, that determines that you are now a criminal, not just an immoral person per se.
So yes. Marcia?
Well, not to get, but getting political. This is a problem with our society in this country now. It's so many people thinking amorally and not believing that it doesn't matter if something is done correctly, legally, whatever. It's whatever they want. It's more of a permissive society. It's not promiscuous, but a permissive society to do something that isn't right, an amoral thing, as Natalie was saying, and get away with it and have other people say, yeah, whatever. And this is why half the country is tearing its hair out.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what we would have done if we were living in Rebecca and Jacob's time and we saw this happening. What would we think at the time? I don't know that we can think that way because it was a whole different world, a whole different set of options and things of that sort.
Okay. Donnie, Saran,
No.
Natalie. Okay, Minya, I guess you can, Steve, I'm sorry, Steve,
Okay,
and then.
that's okay. I had a thought though too, maybe it was God's will.
I thought that too.
Yeah, because maybe God determined that this was the future of the people. And therefore it was, God suggested or told Rebecca that Jacob would be the one to lead the people of Israel.
Yeah. I can see that.
Interesting.
Pam, does that convince you?
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that. That's interesting.
I
I
hadn't
can
seen-
see how that kind of comes together.
All right, now, Marcia?
Going back, I always go back to Egypt and the Pharaoh and God hardened Pharaoh's heart. Well, this is another option where there's what is it, Beshirt? Is that the word for it?
Sure,
It's meant to be.
Meant to be.
Meant to be, and this was something that was meant to be happening.
Right. Okay. Okay. Any other hands that I'm missing? Then let's go. Minya, you can continue reading.
For many Jewish commentators, you want me to skip the boxes, right?
Well,
I vote yes.
let's skip them for the moment.
For many Jewish commentators, and perhaps for those who wrote the Torah, Esau and Jacob were more than just human beings. They were not only the sons of Rebekah and Isaac, but they were two different nations at war with each other. Their personalities were very different, and their descendants became enemies throughout all history. They were not only Esau and Jacob, but they became Israel and Edom, then Israel and Rome, then Israel and all who plotted the destruction of the Jewish people. Esau, Edom, Rome became a code name for all the opponents of the Jewish people. How does it happen that names for two innocent children become labels for bitter enemies and memories? How do such stereotypes develop? Perhaps for three reasons. One, historical experience. Excuse me. Often our viewpoints or prejudices grow out of what history has taught us. In the case of the early Israelites, the descendants of Esau, who were Amalekites, attacked weak and helpless Jews just after their exodus from Egypt. Later, in 485 BCE, the Edomites led an alliance of nations seeking to end Jewish rule of Jerusalem. Writing at that time, the prophet Obadiah angrily declared, "Thus said my Lord God concerning Edom, I will make you least among nations. You shall not be despised for the outrage to your brother Jacob. Disgrace shall engulf you, and you shall perish forever, and no survivor shall be left of the house of Esau." Obadiah's connection of Esau with Edom was similar to the link made by the biblical author of the book of Esther between Haman and Esau, Edom, and Amalek. Haman, who is identified as the son of Hamadatha, the Agagite, is linked with King Aga, the Amalekite. Making the connection of Haman with the Amalekites or of Rome with Edom must have seemed very logical. After all, their goal was the same. They opposed Jewish survival. Their hands were bloody with the massacre, plunder, rape, and ruin of Jews and their communities. For each generation, it was as if the battle between the brothers, Jacob and Esau, never ended. Jews and non-Jews were still at war with one another. The old names still applied. Jacob was the persecuted Jew, and Esau, Edom, the non-Jewish persecutor. Because the history of prejudice and brutality was so painful, it seemed to justify the continued use of Esau, Edom, Rome, Haman, Hitler as the stereotype name for all the enemies of the Jewish people.
Okay. So here we're moving way past Bernie's level of interpreting the story as a story about a family that were wandering around the ancient Near East, and we're looking at it from more of a rabbinic interpretive perspective, seeing these two people, Jacob and Esau, as archetypes for entire nations, and even beyond that, just anyone who plays a particular role, with Jacob being the good guys and Esau being the bad guys. Comments on this or questions?
Wow.
It's nice to have a scapegoat.
Yeah. But
Well, but if you have a group that's killing you, like the Nazis, and you want to connect that in a Judaic interpretive lens, you want to look at precedents in the Bible and connect it somehow, no? Doesn't that help you to kind of understand the phenomena?
No.
I wonder if all this business with the stealing of the birthright had not happened, and Esau would have gotten the blessing of Isaac, and Jacob would not have, and they'd all both gone off in their own directions and not hated each other because of it, whether we would have had all this tumult later on.
It's a good question.
Oh,
Yeah, good question.
okay. So you're suggesting it might have been better.
It's just as likely as the current story.
Okay.
But
But
the,
then you could also argue that what happened happened, and we're not trying to change what happened. We're trying to understand it, and seeing Esav as the ancestor, this, the archetypical ancestor for all the bad groups is helpful to understand. But I'm not really disagreeing with you, Bernie. I kind of agree with you. Okay, other people?
Evelyn?
well, and yeah,
Evelyn?
if you want to look at it from the standpoint, as Steve said earlier, if God had a predetermined goal for our people, then these events, in a sense, were preordained, and they happened because God wanted it to go in that direction. And so these people behave because perhaps God put it in their minds to behave that way. And if you want to look at it, this became the justification for having the religion itself. I mean, and belief in the monotheistic God, because otherwise these just become stories and of human behavior and interaction. And these stories have to have a purpose. I mean, they weren't put there just to entertain us per se. And again, the long-term goal was presumably this belief in monotheism. You had to have stories to justify it. And so this is why these stories are in there, to help us help explain why things happened the way they did.
And you're giving the rabbinic view. Bernie is arguing that when the stories were created and for hundreds and hundreds of years afterwards, they did not have a purpose, or certainly not a long-term historical purpose. So you're giving what the rabbis are saying, which is true, but he is giving more the immediate, you're looking at it, you're not disagreeing, you're just focusing on a different
A
end of the
different aspect of it, yes. And if you
different.
if you want to discount the religion, then yes, I totally agree with Bernie as far as that's concerned. But again, the later rabbis had to make justification for all of these stories and how they fit into their concept of what Judaism is and how it evolved, per se.
And it would be interesting to see how some of the other groups, such as the Hellenistic Jews and the Sadducees and the Essenes and so forth, how they interpreted this story, and whether any of them interpreted it in a radically different way. But if you were in that situation where you feel something has to be done to change what's going to happen, and there's very strong reasons to do that, either personal or historical, would you do it? And for Rebecca, she was proactive and she did it. She's certainly a strong woman character. She's able to completely alter the future. Bernie is saying that the motives were not pure. And Bernie, are you saying that because the motives were selfish, that inevitably sullied the result, or that it's not, you could have selfish purposes and still good results, but in this case it wasn't?
Yeah, I think it was not a good result, because I still believe that two things. One is that this is the rabbi's way of explaining anti-Semitism. And the other, I forgot already.
Well, I think
Yes.
that
Go
you have
ahead,
to
Emily.
decide what is the Torah, and is it just stories that are put there for whatever reason, or is it the Word of God? And if it's the Word of God, then that is the way that God wanted it to go, and that's the reason it went that way.
But Donna, a lot of the interpretation that Evelyn is giving is not actually in the Torah itself. It's brought by the rabbis in the Talmud. So you not only have to accept that the Torah is the word of God, but that the oral Torah or the Talmud is also the word of God. Or if not the word of God, is at least the main legitimate way to interpret the Torah. So
It may be.
a lot
It
of
may-
this is not over whether the Torah is sacrosanct, but over how to interpret Torah. What's the legitimate ways? Yes, Donnie.
That, or you can just accept that that's what it says and that's what it is. Maybe that's too simple a attitude. I don't know.
Okay, Natalie.
Yeah, did Esau consider himself a different branch of Judaism or a non-Jew?
Well, that's a good question. I would, certainly the later rabbis see him as a non-Jew, but at the time,
Was they're just rejecting him? Is that why? Or
it's hard to say, and we could read the box that we skipped, and we see that he's seen not only as a non-Jew, as the ancestor of the non-Jews, but of non-Jews who are very hostile, including Haman, who's the arch enemy. He's really like a Hitler in Persia, except he fails in the end because of Queen Esther, who's the hero. But, but at the time, he's raised in the same family as Jacob. So why would you say that he's anything other than Jewish? So I don't know, but this is at a very early stage in the history where it's not clear, what that might have meant, Jewish, if anything. So I don't know. That's a good question. Marcia.
Very good question.
You have to unmute, Marcia.
He could have turned against his family after this whole episode and just, gone wrong or something, decided I don't like this group, and I'm going to act in a way, and have my children and grandchildren act against the Jewish people or that family, Isaac and Jacob's family. He could have just rebelled because of what happened to him and the way he was treated by his parents in that way.
Yeah. Other comments? If not, let's turn to the box on page 62.
Minya has her hand up.
I have a question.
Okay. Who is that?
Minya,
Yeah.
Okay.
reading all of this and going back to this person or this time trying to get rid of the Jews again and then again, it reminds me of the saying we're always told about being the chosen people. Are we just been chosen to be persecuted against?
Yeah, and until recently, that was a rhetorical question. I think most of us viewed the Holocaust as an aberration from these totally psycho Nazis. But now we've seen in recent weeks, huge demonstrations in all the world where they're frequently chanting "Gas the Jews," without any shame while the video is rolling.
No.
And, thousands and thousands of people in London, in Sydney, Australia. What did we do to the Australians? Of course, many of these demonstrators are Muslims who are recent immigrants to these countries, but not all. And it really does make this story seem more like an existential situation that's kind of like almost inevitable, that we're kind of stuck with this role. Zionism was designed to rebel against the 2,000 years of the diaspora, where we were helplessly slaughtered. Non-combatants were slaughtered, whether it be in the pogroms or the Inquisition or whatever. And that from now on, if we were to die, we would die in combat like normal countries. And what happens? 1,200 Israelis living in these little pastoral communities are slaughtered, just like in the old days. So that's what's so shocking. It's not that Hamas killed a bunch of Israelis, but they killed them in a way that reminds us of the pogroms and the Holocaust rather than of Israel's wars. And not just remind us it's the same or it's worse. I mean, killing children in front of their parents and parents in front of their children. It reminds us of the Holocaust, right? This is not so. Why would they do something like that? This seems to have, it seems to go beyond any sort of normal conflict. If the Pakistanis and the Indians have conflict, but you don't see Pakistanis doing that to the Indians. They killed some Indian soldiers a few years ago, but nothing like that. The Yemenites are fighting other Yemenites, but they don't do stuff like that, and so forth. So yes, it seems so. We have this kind of need to search for some religious answer. Why are we persecuted in such an extreme way? Let's read the little box. Minya, do you want to read that? It's on the bottom of 62, left column and onto the right column.
From Esau to Amalek to Haman.
Yep.
Within the Torah, we are informed. This is the line of Esau, that is, Edom. Timnah was a concubine of Esau's son Eliphaz. She bore Amalek. The Torah tells us that Amalek attacked the helpless people of Israel at Rephidim just after they had left Egypt, because Amalek had taken advantage of the Israelites' weakness. Moses declared that God would be at war with Amalek throughout the ages. We are also told of a king Agag of Amalek, who is connected to the author of the book of Esther, with Haman, son of Hammedatha, the Agagite. Clearly, the intention here is to identify all the enemies of the Jewish people as the descendants of Esau Edom. Both before and after the destruction of the temple by the Romans in 70 CE, the rabbis used the name Edom as a code name for Rome. They believed that one day Esau, Edom, Rome would be defeated and that Jacob, Israel, would be victorious. They predicted that God will throw Edom, Rome out of heaven. Edom, Rome will be slaughtered. Edom, Rome will be destroyed by fire.
All right, so Bernie's not going to like this. It's blaming Esav for everything. He's the ancestor of all of our enemies, every single one. Yes, Bernie.
I would blame Rebecca, not Esau. But the rabbis won't do that.
Bernie and I are going to create a new religion because clearly Bernie's not going to be, what's the word? Prevented from entering any synagogue in the United States.
Does
After
not like Rebecca.
his attacks against Rebecca become more widely known on YouTube. Yes, Bernie.
You're muted.
You're muted.
Yeah, those the descendants of Ishmael fit into all this picture.
Well, this is a different story.
Because certainly they are the same.
No, apparently they're not. This is a Western focused thing, at least partially. Although Haman is a Persian, so that's still kind of the East. But I think Ishmael is with the Arabs, and that's a whole different a whole different conflict. So the rabbis do separate Ishmael from Esav. And then Esav's eventually going to be seen as primarily the Christians.
Of course,
And that's
Go
not going to
ahead.
be a happy relationship either. Although when I was raised in that short time period, there was good relations with Christians, but that was a very short time period. And now we're seeing there's some Christians that are friendly, some Christians that are very unfriendly. Yes, Bernie.
Somewhat with tongue in cheek, but we can blame the Arab problem on Sarah.
Ishmael.
All the women, that's all it is. It's the
Ishmael.
women.
Pam, do you want to defend these women?
Now, I just know now why more Jewish men are named Jacob and most of them are not named Esau. So
Yes,
now we
well,
know.
it does have a mixed interpretation. Yes.
I'm not sure when you were talking about and mentioning what is going on today, and that is, and relating it to times in the past with the Holocaust and others. I think these are Arabs, and you have to look at it at their religion. Their religion of Islam gives them the right in the Quran to kill, to murder, to maim, to do whatever to those who do not bow to Allah. And which is basically anything that comes out of there is okay. And it's like today, anything that the quote unquote Palestinians do, that's okay. But God forbid that Israel should do whatever or not anything. And they're blamed for what the quote unquote Palestinians have done. And
if you had said this to me 3 years ago, I would have said, well, you're a right winger. And today, what seemed 3 years ago to be extreme is now much more mainstream. And in Israel too, people who thought, more, positively about these groups are, this very much harder to see them in a positive way. However, I do point out that Arab Muslims are much more connected biblically to the Ishmael story, which we didn't do this year, rather than this story. Although, I did make that parallel because of the slaughters, but I'd be curious to see how the Orthodox rabbinical thinkers in Israel are presenting it or not presenting it, in biblical or in theological terms.
I also want to just mention that I was thrilled yesterday with the march in DC because it was strictly a peaceful march, and that the those that are pushing for the other side did not make an effort to, or at least that I know of, did not make an effort to get in with this and cause a problem.
I guess there was a lot of security to prevent exactly that.
Yeah, I'm sure there was, but still.
A lot of people.
Because when Gal Gadot made a film, showed the film of the atrocities in Hollywood, there were Palestinians outside attacking people. So, and then it turned into a brawl outside, and that was the headline rather than what was being screened inside. But it's a very difficult time. So what we're talking about in Torah study, inevitably, we have this need to connect it to current events. But I do want to point out one more time, Esav in traditional Jewish theology is associated with Christians, not with Muslims. So you don't want to draw the analogy too tightly. But on the other hand, there seems to be some connection a little bit. I think that's it for our time. So thank you. I have at 1 o'clock for those who'd like to lead services. There's a workshop at the temple. Bernie, if you want to book your flight right now, you might make it.
Yeah.
Shirley, is Shirley still with us? Yes.
Yeah,
So
she's
Yeah, back
Shirley,
here.
if you want to just drive real fast, you also might make it.
I could do that.
Okay, and Lily is wondering when you're going to take her on another flight. And so
Right.
thank you. I'll turn it back to Steve for the final blessing.
Okay, I will update the calendar and send it all up to everyone. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Saran, thank you for joining us. It was fun to have you here. And she's gone. Okay, anyway.
And thank
Natalie,
you,
welcome back.
Steve. Thank you, Steve, for all you do.
Right.
Yeah.
I try. Let us conclude with a blessing then, and then go from there.
Baruch
Baruch
Atah
atah Adonai,
Adonai,
Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan לנו Torah emet, v'chaye olam b'tokeinu. Baruch atah Adonai, noten haTorah.
Blessed is Adonai, our God,
Ruler of the universe, who has
who has given us the teaching of
Truth
truth
and truth,
and
and
planted
planted
within
within
us
us eternal
eternal
life.
life. Blessed is Adonai,
Giver of the
giver
Torah.
of Torah. Amen.
Amen.
All right, everyone, have a great rest of the week.
Yeah.
Yes, Bernie.
It's Friday.
Bernie, you had your hand up? Okay. All right, take care,
Bye, everyone.
everyone.
Bye.
Donnie, thank you for joining us.
See you soon.
And Natalie, you too.
Thank you.
I got your email correct now.
Okay, good.
Bye-bye. Oh, I need to stop recording.